All right, welcome back again to The Real Deal. My last podcast was about John F. Kennedy and his family, a little bit of their history, opening up their closets and back rooms and their attics and showing you that they weren't all what you thought they were. Everybody put them on a pedestal. Yesterday was the anniversary of his assassination. 62 years. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the assassination itself. But I'm not going to talk about Lee Harvey Oswald very much because I'm going to have another podcast all about him because there's a lot surrounding him. And there's a lot surrounding the main assassination in Dealey Plaza. Now, in 1963, on November 22nd, Kennedy's limousine and his brigade was turning off of Houston Street onto Elm Street. And the story goes, 3 shots rang out from the 6th floor book depository. One hit him, and it went through his body, went through his head, and went through his leg, and went into Governor Connolly, who was in the front seat. And it went into him, and it went into his hand, and then they found it in the hospital. Okay, but that's what they tell us. That's what we're supposed to believe. It's the magic bullet, which, if you've ever seen film, you would see that Kennedy's head was blown out on the backside, which is an exit wound. Entry wounds are the size of a bullet. The bullet going in, it's just a little bit bigger than that. The exit wound, everything goes out. And when Governor Connolly got hit, he shouted out, "My God, they're going to kill us all." Did he know what was up? I doubt it, because I know he wouldn't have been in that car if he thought something was up. But still, you never know. The governor was there, Connolly. The mayor was there. A lot of people were there. The schools were out. And they rushed Kennedy to the hospital where he died. Parkland Hospital. And they did what they could. They found the magic bullet. And there's a lot of sketchiness, a lot of stories behind it. Now, the limousine was covered in blood and brains and guts. So, to me, that is a crime scene, right? You want to check out and see, was there extra bullets shot? Were they lodged in up front? No, what they did is they had it cleaned up. They had it washed and cleaned right away. Now, why are you going to do that unless you're hiding something? This whole thing was a conspiracy. And the problem is, this is what the government and a lot of agencies want. They want you to say, oh, they're a crazy conspiracy theorist. So that way, you won't believe what they're covering up. Because the United States federal government is as crooked as any other government in this world. Probably more, because they have more access to a lot of things. And they've been caught several times on things. And to me, the Kennedy assassination was a conspiracy. Immediately, they blamed Lee Harvey Oswald, came up with a bunch of stories and tales about him, and they went looking for him. I'm going to talk about that in another podcast. But they immediately blamed him. They blamed him for everything throughout this. Automatically. Why? Why did they do that? You know, it's like they were looking for him. I mean, it's just weird. So, as Kennedy's pulling down the road, bullets fly out. Jackie jumps out, and they say she was trying to get out, but it looks to me in the videos that she was trying to collect his brain matter and stuff like that. That's a horrific event. I mean, she was married to the man. Their relationship was pretty shattered. She was a very good mother. But, you know, I'm sure they had their issues since he cheated on her with everybody under the sun. And I think she knew. Now, they said 3 bullets came out, all from the 6th floor book depository. But people that were there, and there was a lot of video, not like in today's world. Not everybody has a cell phone. Not everybody's got their camera out on their phone or anything. But there was video there. There were a lot of people taking pictures. And the main video that everybody knows about is the Abraham Zapruder film, The Dressmaker. He was there. He got a very good video. His was probably the best that we know of. Because I think there were other videos. Okay, I won't just say I think. I know there were other videos taken that were confiscated. There were people saying that the people were coming up, intimidating them, including one woman who had marijuana on her, which is very highly illegal. You did prison time back then. And she had a video. She was on the other side of where Kennedy was, across from where the grassy knoll area is, across from where Zapruder was. And she talked about it and said, I had a very nice video, and it was just shocking and everything. And she was in a state of shock, and an FBI came up to her, a guy claiming to be FBI in a suit, came up to her right away and said he had to confiscate it for security. And that video's never been seen. So who knows? Who knows what she got? Who knows what they're not telling us? I will tell you this right now. We will never know who pulled the trigger. We will never know that. Those people are dead by now, and they're never going to tell us who it is. When they release the Kennedy files, even when they're redacted, you're not going to know. Even if they unredact them, you think they got files sitting there going, Joe Smith killed JFK, here's how he did it, and here's how much we paid him. No, they're not going to tell you that. So a lot of people were there that day, like I said, taking video, taking pictures, and when the shots rang out, immediately tons of people, there were a lot of military guys there, a lot of ex-military, retired military, people that served, so they know what they hear. They hear about the gun and everything. They know what's up. They hear a gunshot. They know what's up. They hit the ground. They put their kids on the ground. And a lot of people ran up the grassy knoll. They rushed the knoll because they thought something was going on. They thought that's where the shots came from. And like I said, these guys know what they're talking about. And they got up there, and there was nothing. There was Secret Service guys flashing badges saying, oh, yeah, there's nothing going on up here. Look around more. That area is a parking lot. It was then. It's not as bad now. But it had rained that day, so it was a little muddy. And there were tons of tracks up there. Tons of tracks. Why would somebody be standing behind that fence, which is pretty tall? Why would somebody be standing behind there to watch the Kennedy clan drive by like that? Why? Wouldn't you want to get as close as possible? I would. I don't want to stand behind a fence. I'm going to get down as close as I can to this. And there was a lot of room there. So there's a lot of crazy coincidences involved in this. There was a lot of theories about this, but one thing was there was a guy there with an umbrella, and he opened it and closed it several times. Now, to me, that's a code for somebody to say, shoot away, boy, or whatever. He says he was protesting because of his father working with Neville Chamberlain before World War II. I don't know if you know much about Neville Chamberlain. He was Prime Minister of England. He's the one that worked with Hitler. And Kennedy's dad worked with these guys. Kennedy's dad worked with the Nazis. He worked with Hitler. He worked with Britain. He was over there being their being their ambassador, American ambassador over there. So he worked with Chamberlain. And this guy said it was a protest. And this is 1963, by the way. So we're talking 22 years after all this started, after Neville Chamberlain. And he said it was a protest because Neville Chamberlain always carried an umbrella. Do you think JFK knew that? Do you think anybody knew that? I ain't blinded by that. Then when they did do the commission in the 80s on this and they were investigating, he came out of the woodwork and he brought the umbrella. He saved it. And, of course, the umbrella broke and everything. And it was just a regular old umbrella. I still don't believe that. What kind of protest is that? You open your umbrella 5 times like, look at me. I represent Neville Chamberlain, who your dad worked with over 20 years ago. Ha ha, are you mad at me? And after the shooting, everybody was scared. But this guy sat down on the curb with another guy. I forget the guy's name. It was a Hispanic name. Probably from Cuba, they say. I forget the name. off the top of my head, but they sat down. I mean, there's a shooting going on. I've been to Chicago, and Chicago's not as cool as it used to be. It used to be great, like no problems. But I've been to Chicago when I was walking away from the 4th of July fireworks and I heard a shooting. And I'm telling people, they're all looking like, what do we do? I said, keep walking. You know, I'm not going to sit down. I don't know what happened, but I hear bullets flying. I know what they are. I'm like, nope, I'm going to keep walking. I'm not running. I don't want to look suspicious or anything, but I'm not going to turn around. I'm not going to sit there and wait for anybody. So why would they sit down on the curb for this shooting? The president has just been shot. The car drove off really fast. People are panicking, crying, freaking out, and running. Some people are running up the knoll trying to find who did it. Some people actually cared about it. So these guys sit down on the curb. Like, no big deal. To me, that's highly suspicious. And when you see all these guys behind the fence on the grassy knoll, when you see those guys up there and they're telling you they're flashing badges, how do we know those badges were real? How do we know it was Secret Service and FBI? And what were they doing up there? Now, when the shots fired, only one hit them that they told us about. To me, there was several hits, but one of them deflected and hit a guy who was standing under the overpass. I guess he'd be on the underpass too. It's under the overpass. But anyway, it hit a guy down there. Bullet deflects on the ground, and some rocks hit him, and he got hurt. He was okay though. And there was bullets across from the grassy knoll area, bullet fragments on the ground that tore the grass up. So how are you going to shoot from a 6th floor straight angle and have bullets bounce over there? It doesn't happen, people. It doesn't happen. By the way, everything I'm telling you is 1,000,000% researched because I've gone down there. I've gone to these places. I've investigated Dealey Plaza. I went and checked out every little theory there is. And I will tell you the truth. I will tell you the real deal about everything. I'm not going to lie to you. Not going to be like, make stuff up. I'm going to tell you the truth. There were a lot of suspicious people there. There was a woman wearing what they call a babushka. You know, that's the Russian headdress. So we don't know if she was Russian, but she had the clothing she had on. She looked like she could have been a Russian woman. And she was filming. She was filming, no problem. And after the shooting, people saw her. She just walked away. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She kept filming. She kept filming, and then she kind of tucked her camera away, and everybody was running and screaming, and she's like, guess he's gone, so I guess I'll leave too. Now, years later, when they were investigating all this, and with the Warren Commission, they said that this woman came forward and gave her name and all this stuff, and she took the film and stuff. But the lady came and said she was using a camera, and I can't remember what kind of camera she was, but that camera didn't come out until 1969. This woman was lying. She didn't even look like the babushka woman. So who was that woman? And could she have been using some technology that, was a little ahead of its time? And I'm not talking about a camera. Who's to say that the guy with the umbrella didn't open it up and it fired a dart or something like that to make it to where Kennedy couldn't duck? We don't know, and we will never know. These are what ifs, people, but who's to say? The man crossed a lot of people. There were a lot of countries that didn't like him. Cuba, we tried to kill Castro 30, 40 times and never did, and he laughed about it. Castro said he didn't do it and had nothing to do with it. How do we know that? You think he's going to admit it? Or maybe his people did it. We don't know that, So the babushka woman, who was she? Nobody knows to this day. Was she filming? The woman that said she had a camera, that camera didn't come out in 6 years. They called her out on it. She goes, oh, no, they gave me an early advanced copy of it. No, they didn't. They're not going to do that. You tell me the company, you're a nobody. You're nobody. Unless you work for that company and are working on that camera, you're not going to get an early copy, especially 6 years in advance. Why would it come out 6 years later? So there's a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of theories. There's the theory that somebody stood up there on the bridge, on the overpass, and shot him. But that can't be true because there were a lot of people up there, a lot of police. There was a big police presence that day. There were a lot of police there, and they were up there. There were people on the sides of the streets and everywhere. There were cops everywhere. Now, when I went down there, here's another theory. Somebody shot him from the sewer. And supposedly they saw somebody walking miles and miles away out of the sewer system with a gun hours later. I went down there and I tested all these theories. The sewer was no way. There's no way anybody's going to get that. You could never get a shot that high to get him. There's no way. Now, there was a building there called the Daltex building. It might still be called that. They got X's on the street where the shots were fired, where Kennedy's car was when the shots were fired, which I think is pretty cool. And they're going off of the Zapruder film, and I'll get to that in a minute. But they're going off the Zapruder film. So I stood on those X's, and I'm looking around, and I've always had some theories. And yes, the 6th floor book depository, that's a good angle. That is a good angle for a shot. But if you look at the Daltex building, that's the perfect behind shot. It's a straight shot, perfect. And there was a guy seen up there. The police did talk to a guy who was up there. He had nothing on him, but who's to say that he didn't stash it? Who's to say somebody else wasn't with him and took off with it? He was caught up there on the fire escape. He said he was just up there to get a good view. Maybe he was. But I'm telling you, that was a good shot. That's a perfect shot. Because I believe what happened in Dealey Plaza was a triangular crossfire. I believe it was a triangle, and there was at least 3 shooters. And I know there's, for a fact, they've recorded more than 3 shots on a police officer's open mic on a motorcycle. He had his mic left on, and you could hear 4 shots fired. Now, I think several of the shots were fired at the same time. And there were people down there that said they saw people with a gun. After the fact, they were like, yeah, I saw this guy with a gun over there and stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, thank you. They didn't care. They investigated things afterwards, and the FBI was telling people, no, there was only 3 shots. People were like, I heard 6. I heard 5. No, you only heard 3. That's what they did. This was a cover-up. We don't know if the FBI was involved, the CIA, Castro. It could have been anybody. He had a ton of enemies. It could have been 5 organizations combined. But when you look at that Daltex building, that's a perfect shot. And here's another thing. Like, okay, so I've been inside the book depository, been on the 6th floor. It's a crime scene. So they have the boxes and everything blocked off right there. So you can't go in that area. It's got glass around it or plastic. I'm not allowed to touch it. But it's a crime scene still. So you can't go there. But you can see it. So you can't stand and stuff, but you can get close to it and figure out, that yes, I mean, you could hit him with the shot from there, but you have to be a good shot to do that. But here's the thing. If you look straight down from the 6th floor, Houston Street is where they were coming up in the limo, and they slowed down to turn. Now, he was doing about 15 miles an hour when he got shot. And when they slowed down to turn in a big limo, he's doing about 5 miles an hour. So why didn't the lone assassin take the shot right then and there? Why? That would have been a perfect shot. Wouldn't have hit anybody else. Because from the angle they were on, you could have hit Jackie. You could have hit Mrs. Kennedy, It's a perfect shot. And then I was on the grassy knoll. And I will tell you this. That's the perfect headshot. I've got pictures of it. I did measurements. I have fun doing this. I love history. And I love to show things. I'll never know who did it. I can't prove who did it. But I know it was not a single person. I know it was not Lee Harvey Oswald. Like he said in the courtroom, I'm just a patsy. And he was right. He was just a patsy. I believe there was 3 shooters that day. I don't know who did it. We know why, because Kennedy had crossed a lot of people. They say, well, he was going to pull us and make it to where we weren't going to go to Vietnam. No, he wasn't. He was getting ready to escalate Vietnam, and it's a lot of crazy things involved. he made a lot of powerful enemies. He had a lot of rich people that didn't like him. He had a lot of people in certain political parties that didn't like him. He had a lot of politicians that didn't like him. I could go on and on. He was having an affair with a lot of people's wives and girlfriends, including Sam Giancana, who was in the MAFIA, Chicago mob, which helped him win the election. So the whole thing is a little sketchy, especially with the whole Oswald deal right after that. And I'll get to that in another podcast, people. Please tune in and listen. But then they went and they told everybody you only heard this many shots. They investigated. They talked to a lot of people. The news media was on it, and they were all over it, and they were talking to people. And there was people down there that I ran to the grassy knoll. I heard shots coming from behind here. And if you look, there's an old picture, and you can see smoke coming from there. Then they caught the 3 tramps. These were tramps who were, hobos, but they were dressed really, really nice. And they knew their names and everything. They were dressed very, very nice. And their excuse was, well, they were just in a different area and got brand new clothes. Now, these were nice clothes they were wearing. And I don't know if, most people don't know much about homelessness or anything in this world. And if you do and know a lot about poverty, you have my sympathy and empathy, because I know what that's like, and it's hard. It's hard to be poor, man. I get it. So these guys had nice clothes, and I know that the soup kitchens, the shelters, with the donations, they don't get a lot of brand new stuff. Some of us donate some nice stuff to them, but a lot of these guys, they're not going to wear those nice clothes back then. So that was a little sketchy too. And, they had an excuse, and they brought him in and talked to him and then let him go. Really? Really? Just let him go? No big deal. They're just bums. There was a lot of sketchy people on this scene. So Abraham Zapruder had the best video of them all that we know of. And I'll say that we know of. I think there were more out there, like I said earlier, that were confiscated right away. I think there were people that might have got a video and wasn't giving it up because they might have been behind it. They're like, check this out. They watch it and stuff, or probably not anymore. Or they're like, for real, the FBI confiscated a lot of stuff. The woman I was talking about with the video, she said, I wasn't sure if he was real FBI, but he had a suit on and I had marijuana on me and I didn't want to go to jail and I was scared. And he was a big guy and very intimidating. So, of course, they're going to do that. He didn't even flash a badge. They were scared. There was just the shooting of the president. So a lot of these people were scared. But Zapruder, I stood where he stood for his film. And it's a good spot. He picked a perfect spot for the film. And so let's talk about his film for a minute. Abraham Zapruder was there. Took the day off so he could come down there. He was a dressmaker. He had some money. He had a very nice camera. And he took that video, and right away the government knew about it and stuff. He didn't turn it into the government. What he did the very next day of the assassination, and this was probably the best video that we've ever seen, the very next day, Life magazine, who's owned by Time Warner, it was Time back then, but now it's Time Warner, Life magazine gave him $150,000 for that video. That was the only copy in existence. Now, $150,000 back then, with the inflation rate of about 3.88%, which is your average inflation rate, it could come or go, that equals to about $1.6 million. $1.6 million for that video. And what they did with it is they didn't give it to the government. They legally had the right to it. They kept it, and they locked it away in a vault. They locked it up, and they did not release it until the Warren Commission subpoenaed them for it, which was a federal subpoena. They had to turn it over, and there were parts missing from it. Surprise, surprise. They talked about some of their people. Well, he accidentally, when we were working on it and looking at it, he cut this much off, and he cut this much off. So, and you watch the video, and you could tell it's been cut. And why did they cut it? Why do you think they cut it? Because they wanted it to look like there was only one shooter. They didn't want the major shot. And they still say that big shot that looks like it came straight from the grassy knoll came from behind. And I'll never buy that. I'll never believe it. And then the Warren Commission. Let's talk about that. You got Chief Justice Earl Warren on there, who was in the Supreme Court for, 100 years. He was up there for a while. But they put him in charge of a commission with Gerald Ford and a few other people on there. And these guys got rewarded in the end. Gerald Ford got to be president. A lot of these guys became career politicians. They got money. It was like a payoff to these guys. And one of the people on the Warren Commission was a strange choice. It was former CIA Director Allen Dulles. He was forced to resign by JFK because of the Bay of Pigs invasion. They blamed it on him. They said he didn't do things right. Kennedy blamed him, when in reality it was Kennedy's fault. Kennedy failed to provide the air support. Kennedy failed to follow through on a lot of things he said he was going to do because he didn't really care. He was busy probably nailing Marilyn Monroe. I mean, who knows? But he failed. He failed. Those guys, a lot of people died. A lot of innocent people died. A lot of Cubans died. A lot of Cuban refugees who were fighting down there, fighting for America to get rid of Castro. They died. That was all on JFK. But he blamed Dulles. So they forced him to resign from the CIA. Besides, he didn't like Dulles. He never did. So why, and Dulles couldn't stand Kennedy. So why would you put him on that commission? That makes no sense. Why are you going to put a guy who automatically hates Kennedy on that commission? And if you've ever read the Warren Report, kudos to you because it's so huge. I don't know if anybody that's read it other than maybe Jim Garrison when he tried to bring things to justice. And he didn't actually do the right thing either. He tried, but he crossed a few lines to get what he wanted. But it's crazy. Why would Allen Dulles be on there? I mean, okay, it's like if my boss, something happened to her and she had fired me and there's an investigation, are you going to put me on the committee? No, because I'm going to have some resentment. So I'm going to be like, yeah, she deserved it. It was all her fault. Yeah, this guy did it and stuff. No, you don't do that. That's stupid. But they put him on there. They all came up with the conclusion that there was only 3 bullets fired, and it was the magic bullet that killed Kennedy because they don't want you to know the truth. They're not going to let you know who knows the truth. They probably don't even know the truth. I'm sure some of them do. J. Edgar Hoover, I'm sure, knows a lot, you know. J. Edgar Hoover was involved, too. He had a lot of things going on. His people were down there and stuff. Now, J. Edgar Hoover, I don't believe, was the cross-dresser trans that they talk about that he was or whatever they want to call him. After he died, they came out with that and said he was gay or whatever. I think they did that just to try to make him look bad because they didn't like him. But he hated the Kennedys. He hated them because of some of the things they did. The Mafia hated the Kennedys because Bobby was going after them for no reason. They were going after Jimmy Hoffa, and they had no case against him. But they went after these guys. They went after a lot of people. And these were people that helped them get elected, helped them make money. So there were a lot of enemies for the Kennedys, a lot of them. And to this day, there's a lot of people that still don't like and resent the Kennedy family. And there's a theory going around that when Kennedy Jr. was going to run, he was running for New York Senate seat that Hillary was running for. Remember when his airplane crashed? That was pretty weird. You know, and when the way they found him and everything, I mean, that's a whole sketchy suspicion thing. He got Arkancided, man. I believe that. She wasn't going to let him be in there because she didn't like him. She wasn't going to let anybody be in there. I got to watch what I say. I might get Arkancided. For the record, I'm not suicidal, anybody. I'm pretty happy. But, yeah, when you look at the Kennedy assassination, it's not as cut and dry as they want you to believe. It's not like they put out there for you. And when I get to the Oswald, you're going to see a lot more sketchy stuff. It's like they set this up. They knew what they were doing. And like I keep saying, we will never know who pulled the triggers. We will never know who is funding it. It could have been so many different people, so many different agencies. And when you watch these old movies and those are all, I call them faction. Those are fictitious things based on facts. Yes, Kennedy died. Yes, there's a conspiracy. Yes, a lot of people were involved. But the movies exaggerate a lot of stuff. Just like the Oliver Stone JFK. That is a huge exaggeration, people. Huge exaggeration. But there are people that will believe that. That's where they get their history from. They get their history from Facebook. Somebody posted something, so it must be true. But you know what? Some of us actually know real history. Some of us go to these places. Some of us walk around and research things. Some of us measure things. Some of us get down on our hands and knees and crawl into the sewers and say, no, that shot couldn't have done that. Yes, it might look weird, but I'm not alone on this. When I was down there, I met some people that were there on the day of the shooting. I met this older black guy, very nice guy. I forget his name. Nice guy. He was there as a kid. His mom had let him skip school that day so he could go down there. He was telling me his story. He was telling me where he stood. He was on the main area across of Elm, across from the book depository, and he was waving, and he heard the shots go out, and him and his mother ducked down, of course, and he didn't know what was going on. He was scared. His first thought was they were shooting at him. Or because he was black. You know, this was before civil rights. And not to be rude, but it is Dallas, Texas. There's been a lot of racism down there. There's racism everywhere you go. Racism in New York and a lot of Massachusetts, but it's everywhere. But he was scared. He thought somebody was taking shots at him and some other black folks around because that stuff happened back then. Still happens today. But anyway, and he talked to me about it, and it was really interesting listening to him. And he talked about how they got up, they saw the car drive off, he knew President had been shot, and they all took off running. And there was another guy down there, and I forget his name also. It's been so long since I was there. But he had a book I probably should have bought. He was there. He had pictures, and the government tried to take his stuff from him. They tried to subpoena stuff. He hid it. He published a book. I wish I knew what it was called. I saw some of the pictures in there. It was pretty gory and graphic, but it was real. And it was very real. And I'm going to preach to you a little bit more about this. I'm going to preach a little bit about Oswald, and I'm telling the truth. When I preach reality. I preach the real deal. I tell it like it is. And I want you to learn stuff because they don't teach history anymore. They don't teach the real history. Just like back then, you know, to the victors go the spoils. So he was dead. Warren Commission said this is how it was, and everybody has to believe it. That's how it goes. That's what they want, people. And many people will believe it. The schools don't teach the truth. They don't teach that. You know, you're not going to find the truth off of Google. Give me a break, man. You know, Wikipedia, no. I call it Fakepedia. Some of it's true, like when they get dates and times in the person's public office or something, but a lot of fiction in there. And who writes that? Everybody. Anybody can write it. You know, I'm not allowed. They won't let me in there anymore. They contacted my IP address. They tracked it down and they blocked me from there. So, I guess I could go in from another computer, but I don't even care anymore. I would post the truth and I'd get in trouble. And I'm like, I'm telling the truth, man. And that's what I'm doing right here. I'm telling you all the truth. Now I'm going to come back at you with my next podcast talking about Lee Harvey Oswald and everything sketchy going on there. Oh, man. And then I'm going to talk about Kennedy being flown to Washington, D.C., Lyndon Johnson. I'm going to talk about the autopsy. I'm going to let you guys know what's going down. I'm letting you know the truth, people, because that's all I am. I'm all about the truth. We need to know the truth. We need to keep learning the truth because we're not going to have real history anymore, people. And this stuff could happen again if we don't learn from it and stop it. Try to prevent it. How can we do that? Well, if you know what to look out for, you can. It's not that hard, people. We all have to stick together. The key word here for America is united we stand, divided we fall. Oldest trick in the book is to divide us, so we need to be united. We need to stay real, especially when I'm coming at you with the real deal. Peace.